welcome back to my channel. My name is Aika and this channel is dedicated to anyone interested in psychology, mental health, and anyone who's just interested in following my journey through the Doctorate of Clinical Psychology, which I will be starting at the end of this month for 3 years. So today's focus is on the top 5 resources for those interested in Doctorate of Clinical Psychology. So these 5 resources are mostly focused on the actual application, because I am very aware that application season is currently open. But some resources will also be focused on wider reading that will just supplement your learning and development throughout the year. So the first most important resource is the LEEDS Clearinghouse website. The name itself is a little bit misleading because, I don't know, it sounds like it's associated to the University of Leeds, maybe. I don't know if it actually is, but essentially what it is a UCAS system for all Doctorate of Clinical Psychology applications. The LEEDS Clearinghouse website not only holds a lot of information on the doctorate course details, it also is actually the UCAS system of Doctorate of Clinical Psychology applications. So when you actually start making your application, it will be on this website. And also, if you finish that application and you get rejected the first round, it saves it for the next year as well. So the LEEDS Clearinghouse website is really important because it provides a lot of essential information on all the universities that provide the Doctorate of Clinical Psychology course. So for those who are not familiar with the clinical psychology world in the UK, only a select few universities in the UK provide the Doctorate of Clinical Psychology. So for example, in my undergraduate, I went to Cambridge, and a lot of people ask me, oh, why didn't I do the clinical psychology doctorate at Cambridge? Actually, it's because, well, not only that, but it's because that Cambridge doesn't provide one. So in the LEEDS Clearinghouse website, you can have a look at the list of universities that do provide the Doctorate of Clinical Psychology course. And it's a really good place to have a look at the main ethos, the values, the focus and the structure of all of these Doctorate of Clinical Psychology courses across the different universities within one accessible page. It's also a really important place to have a look at dates to remember. So for example, if you want to be an early bird applicant, then there are certain dates that you have to obviously complete your application. And then other dates to remember would also be, for normal applications when that deadline is set. Also, you can have a look at whether your application is being processed or has been sent to the university of your choice. All of that jazz will be part of the LEEDS Clearinghouse. Another important thing that the LEEDS Clearinghouse provides is the entry requirements, the job descriptions, the person specifications of a trainee clinical psychologist. You also have to want to look at the different entry requirements for each university and see which ones are suitable for you. Only some select universities provide self-funded spots, so that's also something that you want to look at. And for those who are not familiar with the process, you can only choose 4 universities to apply to, and you write 1 application. The second most important resource for the Doctorate of Clinical Psychology applications is the Alternative Handbook. I don't know why it's called the Alternative Handbook, but let's just not question that. If anyone knows why it's called the Alternative Handbook, please let me know. It's basically a handbook that is a set of questions that are sent to trainees of the existing courses each year, and then they ask them very specific questions. They analyze the quantitative data a little bit, and then with the qualitative opinions that trainees have, they just put it into a little box. So it's a really good place to gain some insight on the insides of the course, how trainees feel about the course, what their opinions are, and also on the quantitative side, looking at the number of years that they took to get onto the course, the type of qualifications they've had before they started the course, so whether they've had a master's or PhD or a postgraduate diploma, the type of jobs that they've done, so the percentage of people that have been NHS-based assistant psychologists or private assistant psychologists, psychological wellbeing practitioners, research assistants, etc. Another really important thing when you're looking at the Alternative Handbook is not to look at the stats and put too much meaning on the stats as well. For example, if you are young, so if you are like 22, or if you are old, actually, if you are above 40 or 45, if you only have around 1 year of experience, or if you have more than 6 years of experience, all of these things from the actual handbook, it looks like the actual acceptance rate is very, very low for like those kind of candidates. You know, it's a good way to have a look at how the trainees look like, but it doesn't mean that that's like the rule. It varies each year, and the demographics always change. You can be part of that change as well, so don't look at it and feel discouraged. It's literally just descriptive data. So number 3 top resource is actually a cluster of resources that I've been collecting over the past few weeks. I'm going to link all of it down below. All these are really important, very, very useful things that I wish I had, or that I had and was glad that I had. So the first one would be a sample referee application. Now, not a lot of people actually have a look at this. I actually didn't have a look at this beforehand, but I think it's really important to have a look at it to see what kind of questions your referee would have to answer. As a result of that, probably you would be able to choose your referees a little bit better. The second one is a sample application. So the LEEDS Clearinghouse application website looks very different to the resultant application that comes out on the other end. I'm going to link down below how it kind of looks like as the end result, so how the format kind of looks like. And that means that you don't actually have to start your application to have a look at what kind of questions that they would ask, or the sections that you would have to fill in. The sample application that we'll be putting underneath is not filled in, it's just a sample blank application. So the next important resource to kind of look through is the LEEDS step-by-step guide for applicants. So this is really important if you are a little bit overwhelmed about, you know, the amount of buttons and things on the LEEDS website. This guide is literally step by step, like what buttons you have to press, what's expected of you to write into the certain boxes, the formats, the word counts, all that jazz is in this kind of like thick step-by-step guide. Final one is just something that I found on Google. It's been there for a long time, actually, I think since turned 16 or 18. So it's the Edinburgh Tips for Applicants Guide. It's only like a 5-page or something document, but I found it quite useful in general to see the caliber of the expectations for applicants in general. The fourth important resource is books. So this is more generally on, not actually during the application season perhaps, but actually before the application season. The first book that I would definitely recommend is Surviving Clinical Psychology, edited by James Randall. Admittedly, I've only read around 20 pages of this book, but having a flick through, it really looks like a really good book. Unfortunately, I was unable to read all of it. My flat flooded and the book drowned with it. I really like the book because it doesn't feel really dry. It does feel very personal, and it does talk about things that a lot of people are kind of scared to talk about, really, so on the personal stuff as a clinical psychologist, and then I think professional self, and then political self. It's really good also because it's actually not just one person speaking. It's actually a huge cluster of people working within the mental health field, all writing their own part and all writing their own kind of perspectives on things. So I think it's just like, it feels a little bit like having a really big forum and everyone's kind of speaking very openly. The second useful resource, which again, admittedly, I haven't ever actually read, haven't actually ever ordered, but I've seen it around and people's definitely recommended it. It's called Becoming a Clinical Psychologist. I will link it down below. I will also link down below Surviving Clinical Psychology as well. The next two books that I recommend are more generic, so it's regardless of whether you want to be a clinical psychologist or not. It's just a general wider reading that's a fun read, that's also very reflective, and it definitely helped me be more confident with the way I reflected on things. So the first one is, and I've talked about this on my Instagram already, it's called Skeleton Cupboard. It's by a clinical psychologist who now is a chancellor, I think, who's actually a public figure now. She's called Tanya Byron. She was a UCL doctorate of clinical psychology trainee, She was 22 when she started her trainee course. I really liked it because I'm also on the younger end of Doctor of Clinical Psychology trainees. So when I read this as an assistant psychologist, I really resonated a lot with the not having a single clue about what the hell I'm doing. It's fictional. It's basically based on her 3 years of training as a clinical psychologist at UCL. The second book is, I will always talk about this book, I will plug it in wherever. I feel like I shouldn't be sponsored by this guy, but it's called Love's Executioner by Irvin D. Yalom. I just talked about this book so often on my Instagram and also with friends that like I don't even know where to start. It's just a really fantastic book. Irvin D. Yalom is a Stanford psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. He is one of the pioneers of existential psychotherapy alongside other people like Viktor Frankl as well, but I think they don't really like each other apparently. Again, it's kind of like the Tanya Byron book. It's like basically a series of cases, but Irvin D. Yalom writes beautifully. He is, I think, primarily a writer and secondarily a psychiatrist. But I really, really like the book because it's really personal, and it's also very, very reflective. It's also very philosophical. Each story has a specific moral, so it feels like he's actually generating like a fable almost of a specific lesson that he's learned in his life and then made a story out of that. Why I think it's relevant to the DClin Applications is because before I actually even thought about applying to the Doctor of Clinical Psychology, which I didn't think that I was going to last year, over the summer, I think in August time or something, I just found this book on like Amazon suggestions and I got it, and I think it like low-key changed my life. It really helped me access like very philosophical or the professional or the personal side of me, and learn that it can be integrated and that you can be very human at the same time, be very professional as well. This is the fifth most important resource. I've left this to the very end, even though it was one of the first ones I thought about, because I do have my apprehensions around it. So the fifth most important resource is forums. So forums include social media and non-social media related ones. So the top three that I can think of is the clinsci.org website, which has literally all the information that you can ever think of. Number two is Facebook pages. So there's two dominant Facebook pages, both kind of called like Clinical Psychology Doctorate Applicants page or something like that. I'll link them all down below. And then the third one is Twitter. I don't have Twitter myself, but I have heard that a lot of things happen on Twitter. The reason why I find it quite helpful is because if you have a very specific question that's particularly pressing, Facebook in particular, you can literally tap in all your questions and someone somewhere, because of the collective mind of the UK psychology group, will have an answer to it, or if not, will have directions to help you move forward with your question. So in that sense, it's extremely helpful. It's also really helpful in terms of providing some solidarity of how difficult the season is, and also thirdly, it provides a lot of support as well. So a lot of times you read a lot of uplifting posts as well, and it's quite a nice community to an extent to be involved with. The reason why I've left this to the end is because I really want to advise people to resist the temptation of becoming addicted to these forums, because you have updates every day. Someone's asking something every day. The UK is very big, so people have always some question about something. So I do find that it does increase a lot of people's anxiety, and this is not just like from my own experience, but also talking to other people who are interested in Doctorate of Clinical Psychology course, just reading a gazillion things and hoping that something will finally click for you. And yeah, so just be careful of that. It is very easy to fall into constantly refreshing and reading what everyone says, especially when it comes to interview time and looking at who's gotten an interview and who hasn't gotten an interview and who's got an offer and who's gotten reserve. All this stuff, when you actually think about it, is all just noise. It doesn't actually affect your application if you saw one person getting into a course. Yeah, so just remember that whilst it is very interesting information to have, is not actually going to be any way facilitative or beneficial for your own personal application. And looking back, honestly, even if I said, you know, some things are really important to know, or, you know, things like that, it only happens maybe 1 out of 1,000 times I've read one of the posts. So actually a lot of time spent is, you know, quite anxiety provoking without actually much gain from it. So we've come to the end of the video now. I do apologize that my videos always run over. I always think that, okay, this week, Aika, you're going to make a really short, succinct video that's less than 10 minutes long, but then it always ends up being like an hour long or something. I really hope that you enjoyed, and if you do enjoy, please give this video a like, comment down below any kind of things that you want to talk about. If you're in your application season right now and thinking about clinical psychology, if you have any questions, then feel free to message me on Instagram. If you're interested in following my journey slightly tighter, then follow me on Instagram, same name, the Oxford Psych. I make a lot of different funky illustrations there. So yeah, bye.